Hey guys, my name is Matthew. Today we're going to be talking about the Canon 24-105 f4 L series lens. This is a great lens, and this review is going to give you an idea about who it's for and what this lens is all about. So today we're talking about the 24-105 f4. The two lenses that this might get compared to are the version 2 of this lens, which we'll talk about a little bit, and the 24-70 f2.8, which we'll also mention and talk about some of the differences between those three lenses. Ultimately, I do think this is a better lens for most people, so I want to talk about the pros and cons of this lens, and then we'll talk a bit about the comparisons to the other lenses as well. And finally, we'll end with who should buy this lens in late 2019. Here it is. The focal range on this lens is enormous, from 24 all the way up to 105. On a full-frame sensor, this could potentially be used in real estate shoots, all the way through portraiture and kind of everything in between as well. This is just an incredibly useful focal range. It's actually distance enough you could even think about wildlife and some outdoor stuff, some sports. It really is a lens you could use for a lot of different purposes. Another really big thing this lens has going for it is the build quality. It is weather sealed, which means in theory you could bring it out in the rain and things like that. I've not personally tested it with this lens very often, but I have used other L series lenses in pretty extreme conditions, and they've always done really well for me. I feel pretty confident that Canon's done a good job with the build quality of this lens. Another thing this lens has going for it is the image quality. They actually updated this lens just a few years ago to a newer version. They have a version 2 of this lens that is a little bit better in image quality, but not very much. It's not enough to tell unless you're really zooming in on pictures and trying to figure that out. It's really negligible, the amount that they've tried to improve the image quality, because this lens is so good already. Obviously, if you're shooting with a prime, the image quality is going to be a little bit better than this, but for any other focal range, this is actually amazing. It compares to the 24-70 and a lot of other things. It's hard to find a lens that crosses this much of a focal range and is still as high quality as it is. I'm really impressed by it. Another really awesome thing on this lens is it has image stabilization. That's great if you're doing video work or photography work, because it helps you to be able to actually get a solid picture where you might not be able to otherwise. The image stabilization is also an effective 3 stops of light, and that's just a big deal. It's really, really great and a lot better than if it didn't have it on there. They did a great job with the image stabilization on this lens. So there are some things that this lens does not have going for it. One of them that's kind of unfortunate is it is only an f4. And that means for some general purpose stuff, when you're talking about low light conditions, it just doesn't work as well. It's one of those lenses where, man, it'd be really nice if it was 2.8. The 24-70 has a 2.8 version, and in some ways that lens is superior for low light stuff. Another thing about this lens that I don't like is it is a really big and kind of heavy lens. The newest version of this lens is actually bigger and heavier, and so even though this one is large, I have gone with it because it's smaller relative to the newest version, the version 2 of this lens. One last thing I'll mention is before you buy a lens like this, you want to make sure that it is a really good version of it. Apparently some copies of this lens that went out, maybe they had quality control issues or something, but some versions of this lens don't have as good an image quality in the corners. My lens actually looks really good, and I've really appreciated the quality out of it, but it's kind of a hit or miss thing. So one thing that I really want to address with this lens is portrait people sometimes say that the 24-70 is a better lens because of the f2.8 for portraits. And I wanted to actually address that. I took 2 pictures here, one with the 24-70 f2.8, and I took another one, and that was at 70 millimeters. I took another one with this lens at 105, and I want to show you that the quality for portraits is actually here, because the focal range of 105 at f4 looks almost identical to 70 at 2.8. It might even be better. I haven't done a lot of, but to my eye, there's very, very little difference. So for portraits, this lens might actually be better because it's cheaper and it has a much wider focal range. It's more useful if you're doing anything other than just portraits. Something to keep in mind, something to think about, is this lens might be a better lens for you. So for anyone thinking about a general photography lens, I think the 24-105 f4 is the right lens for most people. It's a really good lens. I've got friends who shoot weddings with it, and this is the only lens they use. I have friends who walk around with just this lens and they love it. I personally have used this lens for lots and lots of things. So if you think that maybe I should buy this, I want to check it out, I always recommend do check it out, do go buy it. Even if you get this lens at a pretty good price, because it's relatively cheap now, it's an old lens, Canon L glass really holds its value, which means if you don't like the lens, you can turn around and sell it again for either the same price or really close to it. Even 6 months later, you'll probably still get the same amount of money at it, because Canon L glass lens hold their value really well. If you got any value from this review, I would love it if you could like and subscribe. We're a new channel, so we can use as much engagement as possible. Feel free to comment below if you don't like this lens, or if you do like this lens, or if you have any thoughts about anything I've said. As always, stay safe out there.